As we get started, Lo, a big thank you for the opening theme. It is my daughter that put that together on the guitar. Some tasty licks, some colorful chords. You want to check her stuff out, I'll give her a plug. What the heck? Let's go. Nepotism forever. It's Preston Smith Music on Instagram. I actually had one that got quite a few views from the other day. She decided to put a looper on a skateboard and ride around, and it got a little wacky, but fun stuff. We appreciate her doing that, and I know the people enjoy it as well. And you know what? We'll just
She's got mad skills, Money. She's got mad skills.
Yes, she's certainly more talented than I ever was at anything. So that's what you want, right? That's ultimately what you're looking for. The other thing that I do want to hit real quick out of the gate, Lo, is I'm sure a million people sent it to you. I'm hoping that you've been on Instagram this week because, gosh, man, I must have got 20. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say 20 people, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I sent back a thank you to all of you because, if I say, oh, I already saw it, then maybe you won't send it to me next time and I miss it. But everybody was sending me the Lorenzo Neal video from this week, which is, one of the most underrated players of all time. Have you seen it? It's like a 2-minute video, and it talks about your draft position and how you blew it up for LaDainian, and it was really cool to watch.
You know what, Money? Thanks for sharing that. I did see it. Mike Chamberlain, remember Chamberlain played with the Chargers receiver? Yeah. He actually sent it to me through a text. And that was the only time I saw it. I was in church actually on Sunday, and it came across. I'm like, let me turn this off. I shouldn't be watching. My Bible's on the church. So I wasn't just on my phone. I was reading the word, buddy. And all of a sudden I seen this, I didn't watch it in church, but I did watch it afterwards. Yeah, that was really cool. They got one wrong, though. I didn't play for the Giants. It was the Jets. Right. So I did watch that. But it's a nice piece, really nice piece. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, listen, you played football on Sundays. Church is usually on Sundays. I think kind of fit, man. They can kind of fit together. A lot of people
say brother.
Yeah, that football is their church, Yes. So, hey, it all works out together. But it was really cool to see that. They did a great job on it. I always love, please, everybody, anytime you see Lorenzo Neal videos, send them my way. I absolutely love watching them, and I'm always ready to repost them. Reminder, absolutely. Come on. I mean, the people love you, Lo, as they should. A reminder, too, that a big reason why we're here is our friends at BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is rolling. Heck of a game last night here in Los Angeles. I know all the people that love the Padres love hearing me say that, but whatever. We're into the NBA and NHL playoffs. That was a blowout last night for the Thunder. BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action. Latest odds, news, scores, live in-game betting. That's pretty cool. You can get into the second halves or late innings, all that stuff, so you don't feel like you missed out because you weren't there for tip or first pitch or any of that. It's got odds, all kinds of odds on everything from baseball, MLB, NBA, NHL, UFC. It is the best online source for all your sports wagering info. So in between games, make sure you head over to the BetOnline casino as well with all those Vegas games, poker, live casino, BetOnline. The game starts here. So thank you to them. Thank you to all of you that are watching that leave questions and comments on the YouTube and rate and review wherever you procure the podcast. We appreciate all of you, and keep it going. And we're pretty excited, Lo, because the last time we skipped a week. So, for those of you that count on us every week, our apologies. But every now and then stuff gets in the way, and we're doing the best we can. So we're going to try to make sure we stay on top of it, especially with OTAs getting underway next week. So next week we'll do this on a Wednesday, and we'll have, at least the Tuesday OTA ahead of us that already took place. But I'll tell you, I'll start with this, Lo. It's been encouraging to see the participation. And I don't know how much you read into this or how big of a deal it is, but when you see the phase 2 of the program, which is purely voluntary, and you're watching Zion Johnson snap the ball to Justin Herbert, and you're seeing Khalil Mack lead the drills for the defensive lineman, and there's old-ass Denzel Perriman out there, running the linebacker group. It's encouraging, that it's everybody you'd want to, Derwin James, everybody that you would want to see there is out there. Mike Williams in his knit cap, and it's 105 degrees out. It's encouraging to see sort of what the participation level is for this group.
No question. And Money, that it comes down to leaders lead. Just lead for God's sake. It's a great book that I read. Just lead for God's sake. Sometimes you got to people just want to step up, and you look at the leaders on this team. You talked about Khalil Mack. You talked about, Denzel Perriman. You talk about, hey, here's these guys leading drills, leading offense, leading, these drills. and getting the young guys and everyone acclimated and saying, this is how we practice. This is how we practice as champions. But here's the coaches saying, hey, Cliff, guess what? You go run the defensive line drill. Hey, you know what? You go run this drill. Okay, Justin, you run this. You have linebackers doing the things because you know those guys are going to show these young guys how to lead. And don't think those young guys say, man, maybe one day I'll be Denzel. Maybe one day I'll be that Cliff. But you have to earn that. That's what leadership gives you. And so when you have coaches, because you're just not going to let anybody get up there and go through drills because you know they're going to do shortcuts. You want guys that are going to push this team. And that's what you see. These older guys are still showing these young guys how to be leaders, but how to practice like a pro in OTAs, to have your veteran guys that don't need to be there, that really aren't getting anything out, but to say, look, I'm going to be here because I'm going to show you this process. This is a gift. This is an opportunity to get better. I love it, Money. I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked and you framed it that way, because it perfectly walks me into this next point. And so the linebackers talked yesterday. So Navarro Bowman, linebacker coach, took to the lectern, and then after him, you had some Daiyan Henley. You had I think Delshon Phillips, who they signed as a free agent, going to be a big special teamer and kind of take over that Nick Neiman position after Neiman left, and Denzel Perriman. And one of the things that DP said was, and I'd kind of love for you to weigh in on this, and look, Daiyan should have been a Pro Bowler last year. That's all there is to it. The guy should have been a Pro Bowler. He played exceptionally well last year. A ton of tackles. Seemed like he was, after a little bit of a slow start and trying to figure it out, felt like he was always in the right place at the right time. I remember we talked to Coach Bowman, and he said, my message to Daiyan was, I want to see you every time they take a shot of a tackle. You better be in the frame. That's your goal. Is I know you're making your way over to the play. If I can see you in the frame, and I don't have to expand that lens and go wide to see where you're at on the field. And sure enough, Denzel was in the frame every single time the play was coming to an end. But what Perriman said was, after last year, Daiyan is now the leader of the room. It's like, look, he's taken on a more vocal role. He's the best player in there, and he should be the leader. And, he said, I'm excited to see him take more of that on and become that guy, because he is that guy. When you look at our linebacker room, who's the most productive player, who's the best player? It was Daiyan. And even though he's a third-year player, and last year was his first year really getting out there as a linebacker, played some special teams his rookie year, but last year was his first year as a full-time starter. He already assumed that role, and you know how important that off-ball linebacker position is on a defense, and Daiyan's embracing it.
Yeah, and it's great when you see Daiyan step up and say, you know what, I'm going to take this role, because you're right. First year, second year, here's a guy had a Pro Bowl type of year. You're like, man, but now you see what did the coach do? But look at where the guy who played the game, Navarro Bowman, this guy, don't know if he would have been a Hall of Famer barring injuries. That injury he suffered against Seattle on the 1 yard line that makes that great tackle and throws out his knee and it shatters his knee. And we don't know. Navarro Bowman was a hell of a linebacker and a guy that was around the ball, him and Patrick Willis. So you have to realize, don't you think, when you look at what this guy's installed within his young linebacker, hey, look, he knows his. Let's watch film. And all you got to do is put on tape to see what Navarro was. And so when you have a guy of that magnitude that's telling you what he wants you to do, to say, I want you around the ball, don't think subconsciously that the young fella is saying, okay, got him around. He's tired. I'm still running to the ball. I'm still trying to make those tackles. When you do that, that becomes infectious. Now everyone in that linebacker room saying, I got to be around that ball. So now you see a guy, he just made a tackle. Now everyone said, God, look at, he's still around the ball. Now defensive linemen and everyone, the coaches, and everyone said, now let's point this guy out. Every single time you turn on a play and there's a run play and you see this guy, Daiyan, is around the ball, what does it do for the defense collectively? Say, if he can do it, I can do it. If I can't do it, what does that mean? I need to get in better shape to be able to do it. So I love to see young guys like this step up, and not just step up and play ball at a high level, but step up now vocally and lead by example. That's what it takes.
Yeah, and look, I think it's an interesting position, right? Because it's a position that got devalued. You remember how much incoming the Lions took for drafting Jack Campbell in the first round. I think it was 19 overall or something like that. But then you look at this offseason and you're like, man, there ain't anything out there. These teams are trying to sign free agents at off-ball linebacker, and there's not a lot. Dre Greenlaw, I don't remember what the contract was, but it was a pretty big deal. And you're talking about guys, that's on the wrong side of 30. Yeah, coming off a serious injury. And this is a dude that I think he got over 10, 12 million bucks a year.
He did.
Because there just wasn't a lot out there. Bobby Wagner's like 60 years old. People still, he's still getting contract. So I think that's like, it's an important thing. People, we don't call it a premium position. We talk about defensive end, corner on the defense. And then you then say, well, defensive tackle's starting to creep in there. And we're starting to see that become more and more important to get the interior of that line, especially if you can get upfield from that position. Safety, of course, here we know how valuable it is because of Derwin James. But linebacker, I think when you start going through it, it's kind of from the talking heads or the people that, kind of get into football. I think it'd be a toss-up between safety and linebacker when you're ranking it. Edge is going to go first or corner. That's going to be 1 and 1A. And then after that, it's probably D tackle. And after that, it's safety or linebacker. Yet I think you look at this team, and I go back to Michigan, Low, and that national championship. And I mean, how important was Junior Colson to Michigan winning the national championship? I mean, you can make a case he was the most important defensive player on the field. So it's not only a position that works for the Bolts, but you saw what it meant for Michigan and in Jesse Minter's defense and how important that group is to have now a healthy Junior Colson, bringing back Perriman to be that old head to kind of help get these guys right. And Daiyan Henley, it could end up being I think it could end up being the strength, like the best position group of any you have on this team.
And if you think about it yesterday when we talked about Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, you think about Alden Smith can play up and down. You think about the Steelers when it was Lloyd, and think about the guys that they played. It was a linebacker type of league. Look at Ray Lewis and Suggs, and you think about what they had in Hart. So when you think about linebackers of yesterday, it was very, very important and very, very imperative. And now you look at this Chargers because the way they're built. But think about what you just said. Talked about Mentor and his defense in Michigan. You talk about Harbaugh, who he is as a person, as a coach. Think about the importance, because you want linebackers that can run, that can cover, that can play, that can hit, that can play, snap the whistle. That's what you want. When you have that type of linebacker and core and you get it can be a heartbeat. It usually in NFL, when you thought about it of yesteryear, that linebacking core was usually the heartbeat of those defenses. And now you see the Chargers, what you're saying, you say, hey, this has an opportunity and a chance to be the glue of the team. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And, I'm looking at, I just pulled up the numbers, Low. And I mean, like I said, Dre Greenlaw, 3 for 31.5. Robert Spillane got 3 for 33. Cody Barton got 3 for 21. Like, I think people are recognizing. I mean, you went way back. I'm just thinking like current times. I mean, 49ers made the Super Bowl with what? Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. As you got Nick. I know you got Nick Bosa on the line, and he was in the conversation as the best defensive player in the league. But the straw that stirred the drink on that D was that level right there with what Warner and Greenlaw were doing. And I think you even just look at this division, right? And I mean, we're talking about how the Raiders got decimated by losing Spillane and Diablo. And they got nothing. They replaced it with almost nothing. And there's a reason why those guys got some money. Think about Nick Bolton with the Chiefs. Like, it's an important position that I think, much like running back, it's funny how it's just the way it works, man, in football. It's a pendulum. It's a flat circle, and eventually you get back to it. And I think it's one of those things that, you tip your cap to Tom Telesco for drafting Daiyan, and you tip your cap to Joe Ortiz and Harbaugh for drafting Junior Colson, and maybe getting a little bit ahead of this and recognizing that, with Saquon and Derrick Henry, teams are going to start beefing up a little bit, and they recognize that the league went a little bit too far this way with the whole wide receiver thing. And now, much like Coach Harbaugh did at Stanford when he recognized the Pac-10 was way too light in the ass, he was just going to start beating them up. It's going to be important to have that linebacker level right, and you don't want to be scrambling like a lot of these teams were in order to sign these guys to contracts that are probably a little bit too rich. And the Chargers, they're going to end up having, if Colson's right, it's going to be one of the best linebacker, off-ball linebacker rooms in the league.
And you know what's so big about linebackers' money, and a lot of people don't realize it, you have to have linebackers that are willing to fire their gun. They're willing to shoot. And that's why you got a coach like Navarro Bowman. You got to be saying, look, I understand sometimes you're going to gamble and you're going to be wrong, But what made Ray Lewis, what made Navarro Bowman, what made these linebackers that we're talking about, Suggs and, different guys that could get downhill? Because you saw Ray, he saw that guard pull and bam, they would fire, they would shoot the gun. They're going through that. You watch Greenlaw play. Greenlaw, they say, man, he will hit you. Greenlaw takes chances. Sometimes he gets beat because he's looking at that guard, looking at his read, and he sees that guard block down, and he's going right now. They don't give guys time to the down block where the down block where the guard blocks down and then he scoops up to the linebacker. They see him go down, and you see Greenlaw, you see Fred Warner, bam, I'm firing my gun right now. And they play on that side of the ball. So it doesn't make like they're big hitters. It doesn't mean that they're just big physical linebackers. It's because they understand attention to details and they're reading their key, seeing who's blocking down, who's fanning out, and they're going. So they have the momentum. And that's what the linebackers, I hated playing against those guys because, like, okay, I knew they said, okay, they see it, they're coming right away. When you let run a lineman or fullback get the momentum and catch you flat, it's hard to come off and make tackles. That's what they're doing good, is an initiation and reading their keys. And that's what I like about what this linebacking core do well.
Yeah, and I think, and shame on me because I was just with them on Monday for a while, but like getting Troy Dye back was huge for this team, especially when Nick Neiman left. Like Troy was arguably their second best special team player. And then when he was pressed into duty, man, he made some plays out there. Troy Dye was making plays. And it's funny, like when you're just in a casual non-football setting, when you're in a football setting, the guys are, in play in their pads or in their helmets, and they're a couple inches taller and they're a few inches wider. And you're like, oh yeah. Well, of course they're big. But then when you see them without the pads and stuff, and you still recognize how big Troy Dye is, he is a big dude and he covers a lot of ground. And I'm beyond excited that they got him back because look, those are the signings. Like those are the unheralded signings that Joe Ortiz is maybe not going to be he's not going to get the applause he deserves. But like Troy Dye was, and we were talking to him at the tournament, and he was like, yeah, I just wanted to come back. He goes, I love the coach. I love everything about it. And, they have a built-in advantage. He played at Norco and he's a local guy. And he said, there's nothing better than having my family out to watch me play football every single week, to be right here in my backyard. So that obviously helps. But at the same time, money's money and your career is short in this league. And you're going to probably for Joe and for his staff to make an offer that was competitive enough to then also use the built-in advantage they have to keep him around. Because I can guarantee on that one-year deal, what he put out there last year was certainly noticed by the rest of the league, and he was in demand. And again, I know it's kind of a weird thing for us to start on, right? But it just kind of goes to show you how different teams can be, that this is a team that really values that position, that is willing to invest draft picks, that is willing to invest free agency capital, and recognizes that, yeah, this is a major part of our success. Because, some defenses, and you can speak this better than I can, Lo, but some defenses, the goal is to what? You're funneling the ball to the backer. They're going to get those 160 tackles and fill up the stat sheet. But then you kind of watch it and you're like, it's I know it's a lot of tackles, no doubt. And I'm not a guy that could ever make one of those tackles. I'd turn into dust. But you know what I'm saying? Like there's,
I totally do.
You can kind of,
And when you're talking about those little things, you see guys that get all these tackles, they're downfield, it's 4 yards, it's 5 yards, right, but it's not impactful tackles. It's after the first down. Okay, you got the first down. You made the tackle. Okay, but you got the first down. Yeah. What are we caring about? You're talking about impactful tackles that you're seeing a guy playing on the other side of the line where it's 3rd and 2, and now it's 4th and 1. Right. You know what? You're talking about where it's 2nd down and 5, and now you look at it's 3rd and 6 because they saw it. They looked at their keys. They saw the guard back down, and they make a tackle in the back, or they don't make the tackle, but they make the running back bounce or lose even more yards. So you're talking about those things that are intangibles, those things that not the tackles that you say, okay, it just looks good in the stats, but it's plays that infected and had a huge impact on the outcome of the game.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on linebacking, but it's fun. It's one of my favorite positions to watch, and it's from the era I grew up in. It's the era that you played in, Low, and just look at the Ravens and what they were willing to give up for Roquan Smith and how important he was, and when he went out, what happened to that defense, and when he came back, what that defense looked like. But the other thing I want to get into, because I keep seeing it, and I would have thought Jesse Minter was chatting with us on Chargers Weekly, and I brought up, drafting and signing corners and how, he equates sort of what the narrative is out there. Is they talked about how, the Chargers played more zone and more quarters than any other defense in football. And, what is it that you're looking for in a corner? And when you're drafting corners, because I brought up the fact, I think I was talking about Bridges, and I was like, he's got the length and he's got the size to kind of be a press man. Is that kind of, and he just he smiled and he didn't roll his eyes, but he's just like, he goes, look, man, here's the deal. And it's one of the things that makes Jesse so good, why he is such an incredible coach. And I firmly Bleav, and I'll keep pushing this guy's going to be a head coach. I am telling you right now. I used to say it about Steichen when I had a chance to catch up with him when he was with the Chargers. I'm like, this guy is just too smart. He is too smart, and he is too freaking wakes up and has football for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you can feel it, and you can get that vibe. And I got it from Coach Minter. And he said, I want to play man. It's like, we all want to play man. If I can play man, if I've got the bodies to play man, I'm going to play man. He's like, so yeah, when we go out and we get St. Just and we draft Bridges and these guys, that's what we want. He's like, but for me, why am I going to force a guy that's a really good boundary corner or is going to be more successful in quarters to play man just because I want to? He's like, no. He's like, it's all about what our personnel is. And we're going to build our defense to match, and we're going to play schemes to match what our strengths are. And our strengths last year were guys playing zone and playing a little bit more quarters. But he's like, come on, man, I want to play man. And so I keep seeing all these articles about zone and all the zone that they play. And this guy's still out there in free agency, and he'd be a great zone corner and stuff. So just to reiterate what he said, he's like, look, I'm just going to play what we're going to be best at. And whatever we're best at is how we're going to play. And last year that happened to be a lot of zone and a lot of quarters. And if we can play a lot of press man, let's freaking go. Yeah.
And I think what Jesse Minter is saying is like, look, if I get a lockdown corner, God, we can say, okay, now like Revis Island, we don't got to worry about that. Then that's fine. Now I can play zone. I can double, triple a guy. Now that just gives you more room to play more type of zone. So, or more type of quarter, or half quarters. And that's what people don't realize. So if you have a lockdown corner, you want that lockdown corner. It says, okay, because now I don't have to worry about that side of the field. So that's the other part. The biggest part is saying now I have extra guys that I can take away and double bracket, play more zone, different coverages. Right. That's the biggest thing about having one lockdown corner. And what Coach Minter is saying when he's saying, look, we can just play quarters because now you don't have these lines, you don't have your corners guessing. You don't have these corners panicking. And that's what the individual like, well, why are you playing so much quarters? You know that you can get to the quarterback with, 1001, 1002, 1003, the ball's got to be gone. So if you're sitting at those quarters for DBs, it's about saying, trust your technique, trust what we're giving you. So when you're playing quarters, you can play off. And now you're playing back and you're saying, okay, I know I got quarter here. So I'm backing up. And so that everything's in front of you. So you don't have to necessarily panic. So you don't have to be a great corner to play quarter. So you're playing off quarter. So you can still see in the backfield. You can still see the receiver in front of you. You're protecting the sideline. So it's like I'm playing bounty quarter and so it makes it easier for corners. And now when the ball's in air, I can break on the ball. I can drive at the ball. So what quarters does is gives DBs the opportunity to make more plays, to be more aggressive, because you're sitting at a certain thing and you say, okay, now I have to make this decision. But using my defensive guys up front is going to put pressure on the quarterback. So it simplifies with quarters. It makes corners just be a little bit more patient and don't break their coverage as much.
Yeah, and I think, ultimately, I don't want to put words in. So you can go watch the interview. It's on. Hello. You can go watch the interview on YouTube, so you can hear exactly what he said. But he also pointed out, he's like, look, I don't ever want the offense to know what we're doing. I want them to think we're playing man and we're playing zone. I want them to think we're playing zone and we're playing man. He's like, ultimately, that's the goal, is that you've got them guessing and they're thinking instead of playing. He's like, that's what we're trying to do. So I don't know, for whatever reason, I just happened to read 2 or 3 different Charger things about the Chargers, and it kept pointing out that zone and they play quarters and it's like, well, just That's it's not exactly how that's going. That's not ultimately what he wants to do. He wants to be able to mix it up and play more man than zone if he can. Let's get to the other side of the ball, Lo, because I don't know if you saw it, the Chargers social media. I think it was Instagram I saw it on. It was on their story. I was just trying to see if it was still in here, but it's not. They signed. They officially signed Omarion Hampton, so he's officially locked up and ready to go. We talked about Raheem Sanders on this team and sort of what is we're trying to figure out. I'm trying to go through here. I want to make sure I get it all together. I'm going to go through positions on the roster and get down to running back because it's going to be a competition, man. So
it is.
Najee Harris, obviously Omarion Hampton, right? You got those two. So that's done. And then after that, Hassan Haskins is a core 4 special teamer, short yardage back. I mean, I feel like if Raheem Sanders can take his spot because he's 6 foot 217, he's a rookie. But man, they were glowing about him. South Carolina running back, undrafted free agent. Talked to Joe Ortiz. He said we absolutely had him on our board. He was a draftable player. So when it was time, when the draft wrapped up, it's like, let's go get this guy. And so it felt like that was a priority. They always a priority free agent. This felt like a priority free agent. So it's going to make that room. They drafted Kamani Vidal last year in the 6th round, and obviously first touch is a touchdown on a wheel route. So that is going to be a serious competition in that room between between Haskins, Sanders, Vidal.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately you look at Sanders. Sanders, a guy Harbaugh likes too, and he fits their mold. He's tough, he's physical, he's a big kid. It's going to be tough for Vidal. It's going to be tough. You drafted a guy in the 6th round that you're like, man, are we going to end up keeping this guy? It's going to be interesting because it's like you said, there is not enough chairs in that room. Somebody's going to be out. Don't know if it's going to be a trade, and because you are not going to keep all these backs, and it's going to be tough.
Well, and that includes fullbacks. We've talked about Tucker Fisk and that tight end, like those two rooms together. When you talk about tight end, fullback, running back, between Matlock and all that effort they invested to develop him, and he started turning into a pretty darn good fullback by the end of the year. And then you've got Tucker Fisk, who's a tight end, but kind of that blocking tight end. Right. Saw him in the backfield. They just re-signed him this offseason, so feel like he's going to be around. And then you've got Tyler Conklin. You draft Arande Gadsden. So now you've got that in your, and obviously Disley is there. So you've got 4 tight ends that are absolutely making the team, and you've got to figure out what Scott Matlock is as far as that fullback goes. We've talked about Steve-O Klotz and how impressive he was, and Coach Harbaugh was talking about him, as when it came out of rookie camp about, he kind of threw out a couple names of guys that really flashed on that sort of undrafted sort of level. And Klotz was one, and Rocket Sanders was another. They signed a wide receiver off a tryout. I was talking to Coach about that on Monday. And because, I don't know if you saw this, Lo, but they did their rookie camp a little bit different. Instead of just kind of meeting, install, 11 on 11, it's kind of all drills. He's like, they basically put him through like their own combine and workout with Coach Herb. And he was just like, we were talking about it, and he said, it just didn't. He goes, it's just okay. So this guy learns better. This guy was able to kind of pick it up in the meeting over that hour and a half and came out, was able to apply it. So that's why he shined. He goes, are we really getting the best guy? He's like, I want to see. He goes, look, talent's talent, man. He goes, I want to find talent. I want to find the guy that I can see and go, wow, there it is. And Daiyan Campbell, the wide receiver out of South Carolina, was a tryout player, got signed to the team. So it seemed to work. He was like, yeah, I think moving forward, that's kind of what we're going to do. The 3 cones and the strength tests and the agility tests and all of the, letting these guys compete on a level field and just see who raises that hand athletically. And it's funny because, you think about that X position and what they did at receiver, right? Sign Mike Williams, draft Trey Harris. And now who's the one guy that came out of the rookie camp? Yeah, is Daiyan Campbell, who's 6'4", 220. Yeah. It's like they know what they need, and they know what they were missing last year.
I think Harbaugh it's such a, I'm not going to use genius as far as just books, but I'm talking about genius in football.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, you go to OTAs or you go to, the rookie mini camp, and yeah, you throwing stuff and seeing who can learn, guys can, but it's like, dude, it's forget that. Let's go and let's let them have a classroom. Let's teach. Let's see what they learn in the classroom. But when it comes out to the field, let's see what these guys can do. Let me see who's the athlete. Let me see who's got that talent. Let me see who that can change gears. Let me see a guy can do these drills. Let me see how strong these guys, because you can get that guy, and if he has the capability, you see the strength, and he has all the physical tangibles, I can make this guy better. And that's what Harbaugh's doing. So he's looking at these OTAs. Yes, I want to see you learn. Yes, I'm going to have you in there learning. He said, yeah, we're going to do a little bit. But also, I'm going to test your manhood. I'm going to see the kind of work I'm going to see how many times you can do 225. I'm going to see how you do these shuttles. Yeah. I'm going to see what you have in the tank, and we can build off that, because you know what Harbaugh wants. He is a tough type of coach. This is going to be, last year you watched them, they won some games, and it was physical team, but this is going to be a totally different team. I think the guys that you see who they drafted and the guys that they brought in, this offense already has gotten way more physical and way more talent-wise, in my opinion, just even without playing a game yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just used two names, right? Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris. I mean, that's your running backs. You're talking about, 6 foot, 215, 220, both those guys nonstop. And then we're talking about wide receivers, like Trey Harris, 6'3", 210. Again, do I think Daiyan Campbell's going to make the team? I don't know, but he made the tryout, made the cut. He's on the 90-man now, and he's got a chance to prove himself. 6'4", 220. And then you got speed. They recognize, and Keandre Lambert-Smith, by the way, when you think about 4'3" guy, you envision maybe a smaller guy. He's 6'1", 185. I mean, wow. He's slim, but he's tall. Yeah. He's got levers. So that's going to be an interesting one too, man. I can't wait to get out to OTAs, just kind of get your eyes on how these guys are moving around, because we've talked about it. You know what the constants are, right? Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Mike Williams, and the 2 draft picks, Trey Harris and Keandre Lambert-Smith, and then Darius Davis. You got who's your punt returner. And then on top of that, we've talked about sort of what the Jalen Reagor, Brendan Rice, the guys from last year, that is, I do not envision them carrying. They're more apt to carry 4 running backs than 7 receivers in my opinion. I would be less surprised if it was 4 backs and 6 receivers instead of 7 receivers and 3 backs. I don't envision that. I think that's something that it's going to be exciting next week to kind of get out there and see how this whole thing is playing out, because they, like I said, Charger Social posted that video of the backs, and you were just like, damn, those dudes are big. Because it was Haskins, and it was Haskins, Hampton, and Harris that went through it. And it was just like, gee, and you look at it, and like I said, Najee, 6'1", 240, Hampton, 6 foot, 225, Haskins, 6'2", 228. I mean, come on.
You got some men. You got some beef.
Then Rocket Sanders, 6 foot, 230, and that dude can fly at 6 foot, 230. So that's going to be a competition, man. And I wish they could all make it. I always hate talking about guys that aren't going to make it. I much prefer talking about the guys that are going to make it, but that's one of them groups that, man, it's going to be. And we were talking to Joe Ortiz and talking to Joe Ortiz and, who else? Cam Dicker, who, is a big soccer guy. And we were talking about Petaia, the rugby player they got out of Australia. And he's like, dude, this guy is big. He is big and he is strong. And that's a dude that'll be an interesting one on the international player program to keep an eye on. Jordan Petaia, 6'3", 226. Wow. And yeah, so he is a big, and you know how those guys are, man. They're just so tough and gnarly and tough. And those are, we did the linebackers. This side is kind of the thing that I'm going to be keeping my eye on as well.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting just to see, because like you said, there's going to be some talent that's going to be on the streets. When you're a team, the biggest thing you want to do is you're like, okay, I want to make this decision tough. You went out there and you went and got competition at the running back position. You're running back, you're Najee. You're like, okay, I came as a starter. Let me tell you, you're not as feeling as good, because you know if I get nicked up, you're Najee, if you get nicked up, okay, I got this young guy behind me that is special, that's probably a little bit faster, a little bit more niftier, and just as strong. And by the way, and now you got Sanders, who's 6'something as well, 6'2" and 230 pounds.
230. How about that?
230. So I got some guys that are right there by me. So you're going to see competition. And that's what I like, because when you had a guy, think about a yesteryears, Charger fans can remember this. You had LaDainian. LaDave, you seen the back of 2-1, it was too late. If he was even, he was leaving. But then you get Turner that knew that, hey, look, LT, I got to rest. To get Burner in there, let him break one. And then if you're Sproles, you're like, oh my goodness, I got to get a touch, and he would break one. Do you know you didn't have that? You haven't had this type of backfill on the Chargers in years. So when you have this type of backfill, a guy can't put the ball on the ground because he's looking. LT is like, okay, even though you're LT, you're like, okay. He knew that Turner was going to take some of his touches. If you're Sproles, and Turner knew Sproles was going to take some of his touches. So when you have this type of competition, you welcome it. But you're, as a starter, you're like, I got to be on my game, because if I don't, someone's coming in and productivity is not going to fall off. And that's what I think the Chargers have this year, a first time in a long time in this organization.
Yeah, and I think you can look at it two ways, right? I mean, you might have the bell cow and you might have the committee. Either way works. You know, the committee's great, especially if it's a punishing committee. And like you said, LaDainian walks off and here comes Michael Turner. You're like, damn, that's a big guy. You know, and it's just like it doesn't stop. And I think that's sort of how, and remember, that's how Coach built Michigan. You know, Michigan had all those backs, man. They would just bring them in waves. You focus on Blake Corum, and next thing you know, and now I'm spacing on who the guy was that came out last year that was really good. It's going to drive me crazy. So let me.
Little light-skinned guy. I forget. Yeah, Michigan tough guy. Carried the ball.
Yeah, because Blake. Oh, you know what? They don't give me the old one. Darn it. Of course they don't. They don't give me the guy before. Anyway, that's what I'm watching. Real quick, Lo, before we get out of here, because we didn't do one last week, so we didn't get into the schedule. Just kind of run through it. And I think there's a couple things that pop to me that I'd love to get you to weigh in on. And the first is just, and I love it, just to tell you kind of where my position was when I got into it at first. I shouldn't have said that. I should just let you take it. Lorenzo Neal's reaction to weeks 1, 2, and 3, Kansas City, Las Vegas, Denver. Bing, bang, boom, AFC West, first 3 weeks.
I think it's hell. You got the gauntlet right away. The AFC West, it is no longer the doormat in the AFC or in the NFL. The AFC West is tight. You already think about last year. You had three playoff teams, and the Raiders got a lot better. Yeah. They upgraded at every position, better at quarterback, better at running back. You see what the Raiders receiver, the Raiders now are a better, solid team. So I think you got a gauntlet. And that's for me, it's the Chargers. How are you going to handle this first game? When you're thinking about traveling another time zone, another country to Brazil.
With Lo.
Exactly. And you know what? I'm even thinking about it. I'm even going. So because it's a trip. How is Harbaugh going to manage this game? How are you going to, because you're going to say family members are coming. How are you going to do? Guys are packing for this week. What are you doing? How are you going to make sure to say, okay, guys, we understand you're going to a different place, and Harbaugh's going to give guys time because it's a different country and it's exciting. But you're there to win a football game, a very important football game against the Kansas City Chiefs. So how are you going to schedule your practice? How are you going to be like, okay, the hay's in the barn, training camp has to be so imperative. And this is tough because you got the Hall of Fame game, you got Gates, you got all these games. You have to be buttoned up because you can't miss, because you got Denver, you got Kansas City, you got the Raiders. I'm not saying that's necessarily order, but you have every team that's in your conference. You better be ready. But I want you guys also to know that the big fella's going to be there. So go to Bolts in Brazil. I had to get that drop in.
Get it in, dude.
Bolts in Brazil. I mean, you want tickets, food, everything is going to be included. Go to Bolts in Brazil, sign up. You go, it's $300 a month. You can have your tickets, everything paid for, airfare, everything. So it's a great trip. I'm going to be there hosting a bunch of this stuff, tailgates, you name it. So that is going to be a huge game. I just think that how Harbaugh handles it, he knows how to handle things, but you have to have your team ready to come out playing hard because you're playing against a good team in the Kansas City Chiefs.
I said, for me, I said, I love it. I can't tell you how many games, over the years that I've watched against Kansas City where I'm like, if only we had blank. So-and-so's hurt. This guy's suspended. What a bad time to pull, and no BS on the rest. You're both flying across the world to get to Brazil. It's about the same flight for each team, 12, maybe 11 for Kansas City, 12 for the Chargers to get there. It's only 4 time zones away, so it's not as big of a deal as going to London, or there shouldn't be any fatigue. It's no different really than going to the East Coast. It's 1 hour ahead of New York. And I love the idea of just it's a team that the Chargers are a team that plays a physical brand of football. And I love the idea of, hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back. Here we are, punch you right in the throat. And, as physical as they are, as hard as they play, and that goes both ways. When you're a physical team, you're taking some incoming as well because of the way you play. And so I love the idea of getting it out the gate. And I just feel like every coach is back except for one, Chris O'Leary, the safety coach. Fuller's doing a great job replacing it. Otherwise, staff is back. So schemes, language, verbiage, all of that is the same, right? And you've got pretty much the same team on, you've lost a couple guys, but I don't feel like it's to the point where communication or gaps or missed assignments like that should not be an issue. For the most part, all those guys are back. Derwin, the communicators, the leaders on the field, Khalil Mack, Derwin, Alohi Gilman, Daiyan Henley, they're all back out there, on offense. Justin Herbert, the offensive line is the same, save Mekhi Becton, it's just, there's a lot of continuity with this team. And I think that benefits them early on. Vegas, week 2, new quarterback, new coach, new running back, new wide receivers, lose your corners, lose your linebackers, get them early. Same thing with the Broncos, man. They made quite a few changes in the offseason, new running backs, new tight end, couple new offensive linemen, new defensive linemen. Now they have the continuity at coach, and I think they're going to be a really good team. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just the optimist, Lo. I look at it and I say, what a way to make a statement, man. Get out there.
Where's Denver's
home?
That's big.
Yeah, Denver's home. So okay. Denver's home. It's Kansas City, Brazil, Vegas, and then Denver home.
I like it.
Yeah. And then after that, it's sort of this interesting, hey, man, you got some tough opponents in there, but an opportunity for you to make you kind of get it's sort of what we had last year. It's your tougher opponents are at home, so they get Giants on the road, Commanders at home, Dolphins on the road, Colts at home, Vikings at home, Titans on the road, Steelers at home, Jags on the road. So you kind of feel Eagles at home, it kind of works. It's very, very similar to how it was last year, where it's it's a little bit of a tough schedule, but for the most part, you would say what on paper looks to be the harder opponents are the ones that'll be here in Los Angeles. So that was kind of and then I think, you're going to have to finish strong. You're going to have, because you look at week 14 through 18, Philly, at Kansas City, at Dallas, Houston, at Denver. That's what you're closing with. That's no joke. But you know what it's like, man, when that boulder's rolling downhill.
Yeah.
Look, so that's why you got to get that thing rolling downhill, man. Find yourself sitting at, 8-4, 9-3 with those final 4 to play, with those final 5 to play. And that's how you kind of get that momentum, and you can take on that Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, Broncos to close the season, with 3 of those last 4 being on the road.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Chargers got a great schedule, and it's what they earned. And you look at it, they're going to be playing some tough teams. You look at the Commanders. I think Commanders understood they can't beat Philly unless they get better offensively. Offensive line, they went out and did that. Went out and got some other gadget players. Went out and got Debo. They went and tried to get better on defense. Right now, Philadelphia, what they did and who they have, and they continue to had a good draft. They're the team to beat. So it's interesting just to see how the Chargers are going to be. It's so many games on their schedule that you're going to say, okay, this should. If you can find a way to beat the Commanders, if you can find a way to beat a Philly, if you can, split with Kansas City, or maybe even, sweep the Raiders, it's going to be interesting, because you're talking about a schedule that's tough sledding. You got some tough games in there, but this team is built. They went out and did the right thing. It's going to be interesting to see how quick this team gels. And I think you got the guy, we know that you have the right guy, Harbaugh, leading this team. You have the right trigger man in Herbert. It's just going to be how quick can this team gel? How quick can they get sustainability? And like you said, get that snowball rolling downhill, build that momentum for the end of that schedule.
Yep. All right. That'll do it, I think, for this week. Looking forward to next week. We'll have some OTAs to get into. Again, going to try to make sure we're here every week. Going to do our best to do that for you in the off season. But be sure to comment. Leave us a little note there if you're watching on the YouTube. Rate, review, do all of that. boltsinbrazil.com. You want to head out to Brazil with Low. Make sure you get after that as well. And we'll be back next week.
Cheers. Peace. Bolt up.
There we go.